Hey, everybody. Getting ready to record episode 163 of Mike in the Midwest. So let's do this. A little slack here. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 163 of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcasts for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Be Our Guest Mike. And I would love it if you give me a follow this week because I am headed down to Walt Disney World on Thursday, where we're going to be there this weekend, mostly at Give Kids the World to raise money for the families that need it the most right now. Down at the Village, where families are struggling. They are going through medical emergencies with their children, and these children are getting a break from their treatments and getting to go to the Central Florida attractions. Not only the child who is having the medical struggles, but also the siblings who sometimes have to miss out on some of the things that they would normally get to do because the family has to focus on the child who is going through the medical procedures. Mom and dad have to take turns going to the hospital and staying at the hospital, and sometimes siblings don't get to do the things that normal kids get to do. So this is a chance for brothers and sisters to get to spend time with mom and dad and maybe get to go on Small World with mom and dad, or ride an attraction over at Universal, or just spend time at the Village together. They have attractions at the Village. They have a model train set. They have video games. They do a holiday each evening. One night is Christmas, one night is Halloween. They give away costumes to the kids. They have a big Candyland game. They have a great pool. It's an amazing place. They get to have ice cream for breakfast. So if you can make it this weekend and join us for the 6-hour show from noon to 6 on Saturday, that would be amazing. So if you could donate to the show, that would be amazing, because it's all for the kids. It's all for the families. So please, Saturday, 12 to 6, be a part of the show. We're going to raise as much money as possible we can for the great folks at Give Kids the World. So noon to 6 Saturday. We hope you'll join us. You're our big fans, and we just love to have you there. So it's going to be a lot of fun, special guests. And if you're in the Central Florida area, come on over to the Village and we'll get you on the air with us. I'm bringing an extra microphone and an extra headset. We'll put you right on the air. You'll sit right next to me. We'll talk. We'll get you right on the show. But it's going to be fun. I'm excited. I fly out Thursday morning. So follow me on the socials. I'll post as we go. And I'm rooming up for the weekend with Scotty G. So hijinks will ensue. So we're going to have fun at Be Our Guest Mike. But hope you're having a great week so far. Hopefully it's a short week for you. Labor Day was this past weekend here in the States. Hopefully you got some barbecue. We had a big family gathering here on Sunday because my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law, so Pam's mom, dad, and sister, all have birthdays within a week. So we celebrated all three of their birthdays here at our house, and we had we just go in. We don't grill. We're not great at it. So their favorite place to get is this place we have in St. Louis called Bandana's Barbecue. It's right across the street from our house. And so we just got some pulled pork and turkey, and they give you some sides, green beans, coleslaw, potato salad, and some sauces. And we had everybody over. So that's what we did on Sunday. It was great to get together with the families. Hopefully you got to spend some family time. The weather's been cooler here, pretty nice today. Right now it's cloudy, and just took Riley out to do her business this morning, about 85 degrees. So can't complain. Not bad. So hopefully you're having a great week. Again, excited to head down to Give Kids World. I did get an update from Pam Forrester just about an hour ago. The raffle for the trip to Walt Disney World, which you can buy a chance to win the trip to Walt Disney World. Now it's got to be taken by the end of 2023. So check out the details. It's all over the place. So you can go to the Magic for Less Facebook page. That's one of the places you can get in and check out all the details. But it's only $20 for a chance to win. I think it's a 4-night stay at Walt Disney World Resort with tickets. But already over $4,000 raised for Give Kids the World. And we haven't even started the show. I mean, it's only Tuesday. So that's pretty cool. So thank you for your generosity there. That is awesome. We appreciate you very, very much for that. So we are already rolling with that. We're going to have so many auction items on Saturday. I've seen these awesome pins. We have lounge fly bags. We have the spider bot from Avengers Campus at Disneyland. We, of course, have the wireless speaker that looks like the Disney Wish. Those things are hotter than a firecracker. We're going to have so much fun. We're auctioning off the spot as a panelist here on the show. So if you want to be on the show, bam, there you go. All right. So let us get into the feedback from last week's show, because last week I didn't think we'd get any feedback on this, but I wanted to talk about it because the top 40 show with Casey Kasem was a huge part of probably about 7 or 8 years of my life, especially when I was pre-driving. I would say like middle school, maybe sixth grade, all the way through high school when I was DJing at the skating rink. Because when I was DJing at the skating rink, and I've done this with every job I've ever had, and I still am like this even right now, any position I've ever had, no matter if I was making below minimum wage or whatever, I always want to be the best at my job. I'm super competitive. I don't know like why I'm that way, but I am. I always want to be the best I can. Like I even worked at a haunted house one time. I think I've done a show on that. Let me know if I haven't, I'll talk about it. We had this haunted house in St. Louis called Silo X. And we saw an ad in the paper, a couple of friends of mine, I think it was in high school. And so we all signed up to work there. And we worked there one Halloween season and we worked in the haunted house and just jumped out and scared people. We dressed up like zombies. And it was so fun. But every night they would pay a guest to say who was the scariest person in the haunted house. And they had like 60 or 70 people in the house at any time. And they would just say the person that was, at this part of the house, and they would, try to describe it. And I got it a couple times because I gave my all. I always try to give my all when I do a job. But anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, with the top 40, I would take it so seriously because I'd listen to what Casey Kasem said. And then when I worked at the skating rink, which I was making like $3.35 an hour back then, because that was what minimum wage was, I would always like, okay, well, these are the top songs in the land this week. So I got to make sure that when I play the music on Tuesday night or on Thursday night or on Saturday afternoon for the matinee, I got to make sure I'm playing the right music because these are the top songs, Expose or, Richard Marx or Debbie Gibson or, what have you. I had to make sure I was on point with what the hottest songs were in the land, and that was how you got it. You listened obviously throughout the week to your top 40 radio station, but I mean, Casey Kasem was telling you exactly what you had to play. He was like the gospel. So let me get the feedback from what you guys said about the show last week. Len, my good friend out in Maryland, said, I love listening to Casey Kasem while I was in high school in the 70s. Really liked being able to hear them replayed on satellite radio. I think the other countdown DJ you were trying to think of was Rick Dees. Yeah, that is exactly what I was thinking of. My first 45 was Garden Party by Ricky Nelson, I believe. I don't think I know that one. And he says, show idea, BOGP top 20 countdown of songs from movies or rides or loops. That could be something we do on Saturday when we have 6 hours to kill. I like it. Thank you, Len. Hope you're having a great week and Sparty on now that we're in football season. Christine, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so very much. She says, I always listen to Casey Kasem and still do. iHeartRadio has a classic American Top 40 station that replays Casey shows from the 70s and 80s. That'll take you right back to the 80s. I had no idea that. See, I just saw this and I am going to download the iHeartRadio app. Actually, they contacted me last week about the podcast. I need to email them back. But I had no idea that this was a thing. And now I'm going to be checking this out big time because I have treadmill time and this could be a rabbit hole that I get stuck down. Christine, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thanks for letting me know. Jody, my good friend out in Cincinnati, who was hanging out with Scotty G this past weekend and eating Skyline chili and all kinds of good stuff, says finally catching up on Mike in the Midwest. Penny candy. I worked at a sleepover summer camp for 7 years. And 1 year, I was in charge of ordering penny candy for game winners like Capture the Flag, etc. Bullseyes and caramels were my favorite, but also loved green Jolly Ranchers. Neckos and those little wax sugar bottles were the worst. Yuck. I agree. And Casey Kasem, I remember wanting to leave church as soon as possible on Sunday to get in the car and turn on the station to listen to the top 40. By that time, they were at the top 10 or so. We got home. I ran upstairs to change clothes and then stayed up in my room and turned the dial to finally hear number one. Such great memories. That's exactly right. But in our church, so sometimes our preacher would let us out before noon, but like noon was when number one was in. Like the show ended at noon in St. Louis. So sometimes you didn't get to hear number one if the preacher went long. It really wasn't the preacher going long. What it was in our service growing up, and again, Baptist services can go long. You would have like the sermon, and then you would have the invitation after that where people could come forward. But then after the invitation, you would have the announcements. And so sometimes there would be so many announcements like the ladies are going to have a potluck dinner. And, Wednesday night we're going to have outreach, and there's going to be, people getting together to make costumes for the pageant, for Christmas. And if there were a ton of announcements after the invitation, you just totally missed the number one song. You get back in the car and Case Kasem wouldn't be on. It'd just be the regular, radio. And you'd be like, then you're like mad. And so you just came out of church, right? And you're just like, "Rah, rah, rah." So it's like you just lost the Holy Spirit. I'm just saying, if you grew up in a church, you know what I'm talking about. Totally terrible. Thanks for the memory, Jody. You just cracked me up. John Luther, my good buddy, thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. I just want you to always know that. This is Mike. As soon as you mentioned penny candy, my mind went immediately to the atomic fireballs. Those were one of my favorites. Gobstoppers and Bazooka Joe were frequent purchases as well. We were lucky that our penny candy had mini Reese's peanut butter cups, 5 for a quarter. Those, okay, I'm glad John brought these up. Mini Reese's peanut butter cups, the best Reese's peanut butter cups of any kind. Now, we have all kinds of, we could do a whole show on this, right? And I want to get your feedback. Patreon.com/BRGS podcast. What is your favorite Reese's version? Because you have Easter eggs, you have regular Reese's peanut butter cups, like the standard 2-cup, in the orange wrapper that you would get, just the original. You have the mini ones that come in the gold wrappers. Those are the best, in my opinion. You have like the crunchy ones. Is there not another holiday? But because you have the Easter eggs, which some people swear by, those aren't bad. I think there's another holiday though that they come in. Is there Christmas ones? But anyway, I say to this day, the very best ones are the small ones. They're like got a little crunch to them on the edges. Oh, those are so good. John continues. I love the Gator gum. I only recall the green one, but that gum was so good. Me too, man. It had a little bite to it in the back of your jaw when you first bit into it. It would almost like lock you up, but it was so good. Says, love the recap of the countdown shows as well. I was a huge Casey Kasem fan. I would have the countdown going through my boombox, ready to hit record if it was one of my favorites. I can remember rooting for and against songs, much like they were teams I was rooting for. Good stuff. Good stuff from you, John. I appreciate it. I love this because we all have similar but slightly different takes on things. It's like we're a big family, and that's what I love about this. Steve, my good friend here, says, Neckos are gross, but my dad loves them. My dad loves all kinds of gross stuff too. I get it, Steve. I'm the same way. He says, so much so we passed the factory in Massachusetts, and my dad immediately pulled up to the guard shack and asked how to get a tour. They didn't have tours, but he still continued to ask about getting in. That would be my dad. So funny. Can I climb the fence? Can I get a sample? Okay, you distract the guard and I'll go around the back. I love this. That's awesome. I hope at least Steve, your dad got a selfie with the sign or the guard check. I don't know. That's awesome. You guys crack me up. This is so cool. Nicole says, thank you for being here, Nicole. You asked if anyone likes the show. Yes, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and it can be isolating at times. Your podcast is like having coffee with a friend and just talking about relatable life stuff. Keep it up, and thank you. Thank you, Nicole. I feel the same way. I'm home by myself now. The girls are back in school. And when I get this feedback, it warms my heart that we all have similar experiences. So thank you for those kind words. And I'm glad we could share these once a week because I love talking about Disney, but it's fun to talk about just stuff that doesn't matter, like top 40 countdowns and what we're going to talk about today. Trisha, my good friend up in Wisconsin. I love your random rambling. It feels like being part of a genuine conversation. I'm flying solo on Labor Day after doing a couple of local beverage tours. I'll let you know how they were on my next feedback. We also had some car woes here. My husband's tire started bulging on the side and he made it to the mechanic before it burst. Of course, they found some other issues, but we're happy to pay the bill because we drive our cars until the bottom practically rusts out. Me too. The Jeep is back running. It will run for hopefully another 10 years, and we're back. We're good. So I appreciate it. Yeah. I drove my last Jeep till, I mean, it literally could not drive anymore. And then I got this one. I plan to drive this one forever. Actually, I was going to give it to Mallory to drive when she turns 16, but she won't learn to drive a stick. She's stubborn. But I told her, if my dad would have offered me a Jeep Wrangler when I turned 16, I would have turned backflips. And I wasn't a cheerleader. She's a cheerleader. It is not that hard to learn how to drive a stick. I mean, I can do it. I did it when I was 15. My grandpa taught me after church on a Sunday. It's not difficult. People do it all over the world. If it was hard, it wouldn't be a thing. And the reward is you get a Jeep Wrangler, like Mallory. And she wants a Jeep. She really wants a Jeep because the kids like Jeeps. But she's I need an automatic. Well, you're not getting an automatic. So that's what I don't understand. Like, what would you tell your kid? Like, I will teach you, and I can teach her. Struggle. Daughters. Anyway, back to Trisha. I loved Casey Kasem. He had a great radio voice, and I remember my mom buying albums and eventually CDs from the record store called The Exclusive Company. I don't know if it was the plastic wrap or the albums themselves, but the store had a very distinctive smell. Okay, you mentioned smells of record stores. We had a place at our mall, Jamestown Mall, where I used to shop. Growing up, we were there all the time. Camelot Music. And that place had a smell. But what I remember was, again, I'm super old, records, like 33s at first when I was a kid going through there. You'd like thumb through the 33s. And then, of course, as I was like in high school, it was CDs. But there was always a smell in there. And I don't know if they like sold incense because we also, when I was like in high school, you would go to Spencer's. Now, Spencer's obviously sold incense. That store kind of smelled funky. It's like the dispensaries in Missouri now that marijuana is legal. There's just, when you go past like a strip mall that has a dispensary, it's like, whoo. I don't know how people get used to that smell because that is wild. But Camelot had a weird smell to it. And it wasn't like the smell of records. It was like just a distinct smell. It was carpet because it had shag carpet, I think. I mean, it was very, I don't know, just funky. Anyway, Trisha continues. P.S. Have you tried the new late night Doritos? They might not stand up to the mustard ones, but they're pretty tasty. I did see the late night Doritos. I didn't bite on them, but now I'm going to have to give them a try. Thank you, Trisha. Now I got to try something. And finally, the last comment of the day, Dennis, my good friend down in Texas. Thanks for being here, Dennis. I listen to as much of the top 40 countdown as I could every week. I get really excited when my favorite songs were doing well. In retrospect, that seems really weird. It was like rooting for a song the way you'd root for a sports team. Also, I remember Street Side Records. I'd visit the location on Manchester and spend an hour or two looking through the cassettes and CDs for that next great addition to my music collection. Although I love the convenience of streaming music and I don't actually own many CDs, cassettes, or records anymore, I do miss searching through the bins and occasionally stumbling upon a treasure, whether it was a piece of music I'd never heard of or an album I'd been hunting for and finally getting my hands on it. I agree. So I'm not going to do this show today, but maybe I'll do a show on this about the DJ company that my dad owned when I was in high school and college in the inventory. So imagine being a high school kid in the 90s and we owned thousands of CDs. And I could buy any CD I wanted because of the business. So if I wanted a CD, I would just go out and buy it and we'd use it for the business. So imagine that though, like being a high school kid and any music you want, you could just go out and buy. Now it's not a big thing for Mallory now because like I subscribe to Apple Music and every kid has every song, 40 gajillion songs on their phone. That's not a thing. But when I was in high school, it was like a baller move that I could get any song I wanted. And then here's the other thing. We had the very first CD burner because we were copying CDs for certain reasons. And so we had a CD burner, which nobody had seen in Missouri at that point, or at least in St. Louis. So, I burned stuff for my friends they could put in their car because we had those really first generation, like CD Walkman things that you would have to put a sponge in your passenger seat, and then you'd put the tape in the tape deck of your car, and it would skip every time you didn't even have to hit a bump. You'd sneeze and it would skip. It was terrible. But we thought we were, so cool to have. Yeah, it was. I'll have to talk about that, do a show about that, because it was pretty cool how my dad had a DJ company in high school. It was a pretty nice side business. Anyway, today's topic, back to school, because finally, the kids, I think, on the East Coast up in New England are going back to school now that Labor Day was yesterday. Here in the Midwest and the Southeast, it's practically mid-quarter. But I wanted to jog your memory here and talk about old school supplies, because when you go back to school, as a kid, not super exciting. I mean, it's exciting to see who your new teacher is going to be, who's in your class, where your seat's going to be, that, how your room's set up. That was always exciting. I was kind of a nerd, right? I became a teacher. So, I mean, two and two. But one of the cool things that was kind of exciting was getting your school supplies. So the first thing you had to do when you got your school supplies was you would get your school supply list from your school. Maybe it would come in the mail. Maybe you'd have to go up to the school and pick it up. Lately, what I noticed, like when Paige was in Mallory, especially, was a little bit older, like you could go to Target and like they would have them for every school. Like, for the schools in the area, you just go and they'd have like lists for, whatever school, Independence, Fairmont, whatever. And you just pick out your list and said, this teacher, and it would right there at the store, which I thought was crazy. We used to get them mailed to us. So you get your supply list. You have to get certain things, loose leaf paper and blah blah blah. But what I remember, I just want to get into some of the things I remember getting that I thought were so cool back in the day. And I want to see if you got any of these things and what I left out. And then patreon.com/BRGS podcast. What are some of your school supplies you loved as a kid? Okay, here's a couple of the ones I remember. First of all, it was so awesome when you could get the Crayola crayons that were in the 64 pack that had the sharpener in the back. Now, I didn't get those all the time, but I did get them a couple times. I don't know what it was, but the sharpener in the back for the crayons was just so cool. It was a box. If you don't know, if you're younger, it was just a box of crayons, had 64 colors. So you had different shades of reds and blues and greens and yellows and so forth and oranges. But the box was an aesthetic to itself. But then if you colored a lot, you could just take it into the back and twist it and add a little sharpener in the back. So that was one thing I really enjoyed getting. Another thing that I enjoyed getting was my backpack. Now, your backpack was super important because you'd have this all year, and it was kind of two things: your backpack and your lunchbox. These were basically your identity for the year. So usually it went along with the big movie of the year, the big TV show of the year. That's usually what it tied to. I remember getting a Return of the Jedi one time. Now, I do remember that I had like a Fall Guy lunchbox one time. So when I first started going to elementary school, my lunchbox was a metal lunchbox. Those were awesome. And I listened to some podcasts where people collect those old school metal lunchboxes. I did have those. I can't remember exactly. I think I had an Empire Strikes Back metal lunchbox. And inside the metal lunchbox, it actually had a thermos. So, and I want to say the lunchbox and the thermos were the thermos brand. And I remember that my mom, when it got cold, like in the colder months here in St. Louis, she would make, and so in the thermos, instead of it being a drink, she would make chicken noodle soup and put in the thermos, and it would stay hot. And then the lid for the thermos would turn into like a cup, and you'd take the chicken noodle soup out, pour it into the cup, and you could eat it, at lunchtime as your meal. And she'd pack like a little sandwich to go with it and some chips, maybe throw in a ding dong or something. And that was your lunch. But that was awesome. But those metal lunch boxes with the thermos were just awesome. I know people that collect them, and I'm super tempted to try. I did get an Empire Strike. I think it's an Empire Strikes Back one a few years ago at I think a store called Five Below. It didn't have a thermos or anything like that, but it's a metal lunchbox, like replica, and it is so cool. And actually, I took it to when I used to still teach at Probe, when I taught at Gifted, I took my lunch in it every day for like 3 years, right at the end of my teaching career, because I just thought it was awesome. It was small. It was kind of small though, but it didn't have a thermos, but it was fun to take. So I love that. The other so backpacks though, your backpack was like essential because again, it would have your maybe your favorite sports team, maybe Star Wars, maybe back in the day, Dukes of Hazard was a big TV show. Like I said, Fall Guy, Incredible Hulk, Gremlins was a big thing. So you'd have your backpack each year. And here's the thing about backpacks, and Scott and I were talking about this. Every year you had to have a new backpack, and typically your backpack wasn't worn out. Now I was kind of rough on them because like I walked home a lot of times. Like you drag it sometimes. Boys were rough on supplies, but a lot of times kids would have to get new backpacks every year and the backpack wasn't worn out. It was just, it was just a thing to get a new backpack. That was just big backpack business trying to sell you a new one every year, I guess. Anyway, that was a big deal. The other another supply that was always very important to me was your supply box that you put in your desk. Now, back in the day, now see the girls when they were in school, my girls, they always had the plastic, supply box. And as I recall, they had kind of like bubbles on them, kind of like bubble plastic, and they'd be different colors, purple and like half purple, half clear, stuff like that. And you put your glue and your colored pencils and all that stuff in there, scissors, glue sticks, boring stuff. What I remember though, with again, old, my supply box was made out of, it was like paper, not paper, but it was like cardboard. It was like super sturdy cardboard. And it would have, again, all kinds of themes you could pick from baseball teams, football teams, but on the sides it would have like rulers, so you could use that. It might have multiplication tables, might have the presidents. It was educational, but it was like a almost like a cardboard box, but they were always so cool looking. I don't know why I liked them so much. It was almost like a cigar box, but it was bigger, a little bit bigger than a cigar box. But those were always so fun to get. But here's the end all and be all of school supplies every year. This was the thing you had to have besides the metal lunchbox. You know where I'm going with this, right? Saved it to the end. You had and they got banned, and this was a crime against humanity. And I always said this at our staff meetings when I was a teacher. I used to argue with my principal about this as a grown sixth grade teacher. My favorite thing to get when I was in school was the Trapper Keeper. I loved my Trapper Keeper. The Trapper Keeper, if you don't know, was an organizational tool that did it all. It had your folders of different colors, and it had the 3-ring binder. And so you put your folders in there, but it also had like a clipboard. So you could put like a legal tablet in there. It also had like pockets. So you could quickly put stuff in the, side pockets there if you needed to. And it all, but the thing was, again, it was your personality. Like it would, on the outside, it could have a baseball player, it could have like a Lamborghini, like a hot car, it could have like a sunset, it could have a very abstract, artistic looking picture, it could have a kitten, it could have a puppy, it could have a sailboat. The Trapper Keeper was awesome. And I know now they make them again. You can get them, I think, at Walmart, the replicas. I've almost bought one, but like everything I do is digital at this point. I do nothing with paper. I really want one, but I'm kind of practical and I don't know what I would do with it. But there was just that sound when I was in school, everybody had one. And so when we would change from, say, spelling to math, the funny joke was like it wasn't a joke back then. It's just how it was. Like we didn't know we were living in the best times, but everybody would just be like, because the Trapper Keeper had this Velcro when you opened it up, like, and so everybody would, put their spelling paper in their spelling folder and, grab a new piece of paper for math, or take out their math homework. And they were the coolest. And they got banned because they were big and they didn't fit into desks. But come on, we need to get bigger desks. That's how you solve that problem. You don't ban Trapper Keepers. They were the essential. They were the original organizational system for kids. They were awesome. So, as we wrap up today's Mike in the Midwest, what were your favorite old school supplies? Did you have any of the ones I talked about? Which ones did I leave off? And what were your thoughts on the Trapper Keeper? Did you have one? What was your favorite? And should we bring them back? I can't wait to hear your feedback. So I hope to talk to you on Saturday. Carve some time out, noon to 6. You guys are my friends. We're going to talk. We're going to have a good time. We're going to do a lot of good down at Give Kids the World. But I appreciate you guys so very much. Thanks for allowing us to do what we do. You guys are the best. So until we talk again, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.